All right, hello everybody and welcome to the session here at TPE. I'm Angel Absetti. I'm the tobacco editor with Convenience Store Petroleum, CSP Magazine, and I'm co-hosting with TPE this particular panel made of retailers, and we have scientists and we have folks who market the product that we're going to be talking about, the modern oral nicotine pouch product, as well as some other topics within OTP and retail that we'll probably be hitting at later. We're going to be focusing on the modern oral and nicotine pouch category for this session. And if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll be offering a time later toward the end of the session where we can take all of your Q&A. So right now, I'll go ahead and allow the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Peter right here.
Peter Federal, a senior category manager for the Wills Group. We have branded C-stores called Dash In, a little under 60 C-stores in Maryland, Virginia, and Delaware.
Ray Johnson, I'm with Speedy Mart here in Las Vegas. We have 23 locations, and I've been in the C-store business for 40 years, and I can't believe it myself.
You invented the first C-store.
That's right.
And I invented AOL, by the way, just in case you're wondering. Thomas?
I'm Thomas Eriksson. I'm 31 years old. My passport says 69. I still have a lot of things I would like to do before I die. I'm coming from Sweden and been doing everything with nicotine since Nicorette time, mainly working in the pharmaceutical industry. Have my private consultant company and is working with different projects globally.
We are very fortunate to have Thomas here. He is very involved in the development of the pouches that we're talking about today. And then we have Jason.
My name is Jason Kerrigan. I'm the president of Drift Sciences. We manufacture the Drift product. We're one of 5 of the white nicotine pouch products that are legally available on the market in the US today.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. So just to give a brief idea, many of you have already experienced this product. For many of you, like our retailers here, it's a relatively new product, so you kind of want to know more. For things that we've been following with CSP, it's one of the products that seems to be really gaining traction within the convenience space. And with regards to how the convenience space affects other tobacco products, when it hits big in convenience, it really floats all the boats in terms of other retail areas that products tend to have traction for. We had a little call earlier, and it's confirming a lot of what I've been hearing, is that there's a lot of consumer education out there. Consumers are recognizing the product, and I think that at this point, it's the numbers that we're seeing just in general reporting, as high as 83% year-over-year growth expected through 2025. So it's the potential is really large and coming out of really a short ramp up for, I think, the way that these products look like now. And I think when we go into the history of it, you'll understand that the products has taken different forms in different parts of the world. So actually, Jason, you volunteered to help us out a little bit with fleshing out some of the numbers that Nielsen and others have been putting out in terms of the category, just to give us a base of what we're talking about.
Sure, Angel, thank you. So I'm sure many of you retailers are seeing the nicotine pouch business grow very quickly in your convenience stores and independents. Right now, according to the latest Nielsen statistics, the nicotine pouch, or what we call modern oral categories, on a run rate now to do about $400 million this year at retail, which is pretty alarming given the fact that the category's really only been on the market for about 3 or so years. It's now about 4.5% of the smokeless category. In the last 13 weeks, cut of Nielsen. Just 26 weeks ago, it was like 3.5%. So it's just continuing to gobble up the smokeless category space. And after coming through a number of retail visits this last week in various markets, you can start seeing the operators and the clerks are becoming very familiar with this product. Zyn has the clear market advantage right now at about 87% share. But On, Velo, Drift, and Rogue are starting to make inroads into the stores as we all ramp up our production. But I think Zyn has done a fantastic job of educating the market and getting a very attractive shelf presence. And I think you're starting to see the clerks become very familiar with this product, and people are asking for it, and in some cases it's being recommended. So we're starting to see the ITP space open up with a lot of these innovative tobacco products being clustered together. Obviously, with what's gone on in vape and the removal of flavors has left some big gaping holes on the retail shelves, and I think the modern oral category is really ripe for filling that hole right now. So it's a little bit of a land grab, and Big Tobacco is spending gobs of money to get on shelf and educate consumers and offer attractive price points. But it's a very fast-growing category, and I think it's on pace to do $1 billion over the next couple of years.
That's fantastic. And I actually think that one of the things we really want to do today is help you all understand what the product is. Like I said, for many of you, it's relatively new. So we want to spend a little bit of time in the beginning of the session to really kind of get as much of that information out there between Jason and Thomas. And then certainly we'll bring in our retailers because they've had some experience with the product so far and can relate to those. But Thomas, why don't you give us a little bit of that history and kind of bring us to where some of those key milestones have come in for this product?
Yeah, I will do that very shortly, but it's a very long story. Nicotine, Nicorette started in the 1960s because we had got submarines which you couldn't smoke in, and that led to Nicorette. So I came to Nicorette 1982. It was approved in the United States. 1984. But we all knew that Nicorette had a side effect like hiccups, pressure over your chest and so on. So during the 80s we developed white pouches. But at that time point it was not well perceived that we launched the product. We were competing with cigarettes because we were in the same company. So if I take a Drift today, this is more or less the same type of formulation we did in the 80s. It will come back later on.
Thomas, this is in Europe, Sweden.
Yeah, we were thinking globally. So anyhow, nothing happened. And then there is a myth. You are not allowed to add nicotine to cigarettes. So that was something which was dominating everything which we tried to do. You're not allowed to add nicotine to any tobacco product. And so you had a legal conflict between pharmaceutical law and the tobacco law. So in 2003, we did an agreement with Swedish medicinal product agencies. Then we said, the difference between a pharmaceutical product, smoking cessation, and a tobacco goods, as we say, a tobacco article, is the intended use. Once you have said that, then it's not easy to convince the authorities that that is the way the future is. So I sometimes say you have to think of Apollo 9, the first picture of the globe. You have to use drones, go back and forward and look over the world, because we have the global perspective of this. Not only Sweden. You had a ban of snus in European Union, and we said we would like to change that. So then if I go back then and say United States, then you got a new law, Family Prevention Act, 2009, signed by President Obama, and we have studied that quite a lot in the pre-work. But when he signed the law, then we started to understand we need to focus on the United States. The product was there. I mean, it was no-brainer. And then we started to work with Mr. Beat Burger and Burger & Söner to develop a pharma product. That we did around 2010. So I will stand up here. So this is a product developed by Swedish Match and a product called Nicotine in Sweden. But if you analyze this product, because this company Nicotine was bought 2009 by Reynolds, and it's a patent from 2003 and 2007. And if I look upon the product, it's Velo today. So that's why Velo has only 2 and 4 milligram, because it has a pharmaceutical background. Then this was also, we knew about this, it's also from Helsingborg. It's also a white pouch, it's pharmaceutical. But what we were thinking, pharmaceutical, we are not smoking cessation. Because smoking cessation, it's, we said it in the following way. Snuff is for seamen. Snus is for truck drivers. What do we do for the contemporary man, and particularly women? They will never ever use a Swedish snus if you ask a French lady. No way. Then we discussed how do we take away the nitrosamines, and then we said take away the tobacco. So 2011 in September, we had a meeting in Dortmund, and this meeting was very important. It was Rick Charles, are you here? Stand up. Stand up. Is Frank Svandal here? No? Mark Kassar, you Kassar, my people from my company, we actually said then, white product in the United States, under the Family Prevention Act. And you looked on the law, and thanks to Cretec, we got the injection to go for the US market. That was 2011. That led to a product. This was the first product we shipped to the United States from Tilse. It's under a patent called what we call the free nicotine salt. This product, which is now owned by Altria, and Syn is the same product. It's the same product. It's a free nicotine salt. And
so Altria and Zyn, right? I mean, I'm sorry, Altria and On.
That's right. It's the same product. So once you have done that, you've got the legal support, then you think it's easy. And 2012, when we launched, everyone was thinking, even Cretec, vape, electronic cigarette, snus is dead, not possible to do all white. So we had a tremendous problem in getting it to be tested. Then Swedish Match and Philip Morris International had a very good collaboration, a joint venture in Sweden, SMPMI, and we started to work with SMPMI to have it a global vision over it. And then we managed to convince even Swedish Match, because you have to understand how big tobacco companies is thinking, market shares. So if you go to Sweden with white product, they will lose market share. So we then needed to find a way to do a test in the United States. So we managed to get Swedish Match on the hook. It was so much internal political work outside to Swedish Match to benchmark that. So we managed. And then Syn went on the market, and now we have a booming effect, not only in the United States, but also in Europe, because we said that there is a snus ban in European Union, but in the directive you can read and say it's up to the national countries in European Union to decide on nicotine products like electronic cigarettes. So it opened up. And today you can see that nicotine pouches, modern oral, or what we call it, is sold in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Czech Republic, Slovenia, Austria, Switzerland, UK, and it's not booming like in the United States, but it comes very strongly.
Is the snus product then?
We
seen
don't.
as
You
se-
shouldn't
as
use
secret?
the word snus.
Yes, exactly, because we're not talking about snus.
And if we look strategically on this, I mean, it's wrong to call it modern oral. Nicotine pouches is wrong. We need to find a category name like vape or something. So send an email.
Well,
There-
yeah.
there's
Good luck on that. Inviting category to
You need to
anyone.
find a
We're
way.
taking suggestions here.
Yeah.
But let me do this. I know that we at CSP covered Zin's marketing effort through various states, and they have since talked about several things that they did, including offering different flavors, pop-up stores. We visited a pop-up store that they did, which I think did a very good job of kind of framing the product in a lifestyle type of format. So that really only occurred in the last few years. I mean, I want to say 4, 5, 6 years. So the ramp up to this has been very quick. And now, Jason, why don't I just go ahead and bring you in? And are there things that you kind of want to add in terms of how the product's been settling in and how people have been, or whatever you kind of want to chime in on at this point with regards to the history?
Well, I think we're seeing, as Thomas alluded to, when the all-white category, modern oral, whatever we want to call it, kind of started emerging in the 2011, 2013, we started looking at these products. Vape was in the limelight in such a high degree, and consumers were flocking to it, as were retailers, that it overshadowed this kind of all-white. But what vape ultimately did was expose people to the idea that they could use a product with less risk. And they could use a nicotine product for recreational purposes that had no combustion, that had no tobacco, and had great flavor. And so I think that opened up the mindset to consumers that they didn't have to get their nicotine from tobacco anymore. And I think that paved the way for the success we're having in the category right now. And I think, you're seeing this in other categories, whether it's Beyond Meat or Impossible Burger or your latest fancy nut milk. Consumers are looking for quote-unquote healthier alternatives or less risky alternatives to the foods that they've been accustomed to their whole life. But the movement of millennials and Gen X toward products that offer less risk to the environment, to their bodies, to their health, is very much on trend. But it just takes a few products to kind of break through, and Zyn has certainly done that, to educating the market that there's another way to get your nicotine. And I think we're seeing some real positive momentum in the category as a result of that.
You know what, maybe it's a good time just to bring in our retailers here, if it's okay with you, just to talk about how your experience so far with the product and talk a little bit about the consumer acceptance that you've seen. So go ahead, Peter, why don't you start?
Absolutely. So we're fairly new in terms of our nicotine pouch distribution, but we launched Velo in July of 2019, got Zyn shortly after that in about August. And to put it in context, Velo is in about 100% of the stores, where Zyn at this point is in about a third of the stores, and that will eventually expand to all of them. But we've seen a steady ramp up of sales, sometimes a doubling of sales month to month since the summer. And we're maturing right now about around 2.3, 2.4% of smokeless sales, but we expect that to increase based on the current ramp up we've seen. And to Jason's point, I agree that vapes opened up the mindset of the consumer to less risky, maybe modified risk, quote unquote, products. And even I think the ability to customize the nicotine consumption, whether it be variants of milligrams, nicotine percentage. I think the millennials and the consumers today want to have the ability to customize their consumption of whatever it is, and makes them feel empowered and happy to shop somewhere.
I feel like that Pringles chip where you have the onion chip that you want, and then you take out the barbecue chip and you make it that flavor. Anyway, I don't think that's what we're talking about, but
Something
it's what
like
came to mind. Ray, go ahead and tell us about what you've experienced with at your stores.
We've been selling Zyn a little over 2 years, and it was really the major one for the tobacco pouch. I take the snus as really the precursor to it, because when the snus came out, people didn't really know what it was. It took some education to the employee. It took education to the consumer. And by the time Zyn came out, that didn't seem to be necessary. People tried it. They were looking for a way to have the nicotine without the tobacco, and they would go on their phone and find out about it and not really need the interaction with the consumer like with the employee like they did before. And between the displays and out front and internet access, it just kind of took off all by itself. And currently 92% of that category for me is Zyn.
I guess where I'm kind of starting to clue in a little bit here is that this discussion of getting a tobacco-free source of nicotine seems like a complicated story to me, but it sounds like customers are already walking in to your stores with that storyline in mind.
Absolutely. I think as awareness builds about these products, and I think like a lot of products, they need other products to legitimize them. Like a Red Bull needs a Monster, a Zyn needs a Velo, or a Drift. I think as more brands work at communicating what this category is, I think that you'll see more consumers open to this tobacco-free approach. And I think the regulatory environment is, from a retailer standpoint, is making us think long and hard about having to carry these items, hedging the strategy, if you will, so we're prepared and consumers already know that we're a destination for these products.
Ray, did you want to jump in there too? Consumers seem to want to get their products from convenience stores.
Yes, convenience stores have always been the predominant supplier of nicotine. When Velo just came into our market, they invested a lot of money on advertising at the gas pump. And when the ad came out, I didn't even have the product yet. But the ad came out, and the consumer pumping gas sees this product, and it's being explained while you're pumping gas. And it took me about a week to get the product in the stores, because it's like, I can't have these customers seeing the ad, pumping gas, and then come inside, and I go, oh no, we don't carry that yet. We haven't. So just the fact that they had that ad generated the interest in a new brand. And people immediately, even if they were already using the Zyn, they go, well, let's try this one too and see which one I like better. So I think that as each one gets introduced, you'll have that same thing, that more people will try different ones. And so many of our consumers now use more than one nicotine item.
Whether it be vaping in a pouch,
they might use cigarettes, they might use this,
pouch.
they might use that. They're not, it used to be, this was a brand of cigarettes I smoked and that was it. There was no option. Now they have lots of options in mind that I'll use this product in this situation, a different product in a different situation.
I do want to get into a little bit more about the products, but I am curious because this product came up more than once, is this issue of supply and being able to get the products that are in demand in other markets, but you just don't have it in yours. Just talk briefly about how the supply thing has been going with you all in terms of getting what you want in your stores.
Speaking specifically to these pouches, again, the availability of Vivo was the first time, I think, on the East Coast that I had the ability to, and Zyn shortly after. I know in terms of other products outside those two brands, before they were acquired by Altria, could have been a product that I carried, but now Altria seems to be focusing more on their supply chain and rolling out. And then I think Drift is, we're recently talking about Drift now and maybe some distribution in probably second quarter of this year, but it's been, at least on the East Coast, I think a slower migration. As I understand, most of the experimentation was out on the West Coast, but it does seem that it's slowly developing, and again, the growth is there, so I think most retailers like myself are going to take a serious look at it.
And then, of course, you spoke to a little bit of your supply issues. You had things you didn't.
Same thing. Drift was in California, but it wasn't here. Then the first time I even heard of Rogue was in the magazine. And I saw the ad, and so I contacted them and said, oh, it sounds like a cool name, sounds like something we're interested in. And he goes, we don't go to Nevada.
Rats. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
Angel, I
ahead,
think
please,
it's not unlike the bourbon craze that's been going on for the last 10 years. Bourbon whiskey is not something you can just make like vodka and spit it out the next week. It takes aging, and it takes oak barrels, and it takes complicated processes and grain and mash bills and everything else. And when the bourbon boom hit, all the distilleries were caught flat-footed because they just didn't have enough reserves to fill the demand that was happening. And that's what the entire category is facing right now. The category is growing so fast that Drift and everybody, we're all focused on increasing our production, our supply. We're not trying to get ahead of the markets. We have to roll out in states where we can win. And we're adding more machinery, more production capacity every single month so that we can keep up with the demand that we're forecasting, very similar to what happened in the brown spirits category.
Go ahead, Thomas.
It's the same situation in Europe when it comes to supply. The manufacturer of equipment to do stick pack, they are fully booked. GD, I think it now takes 2 years to get the machine. Hauni, they stopped producing machine a year ago, saying we will not do any white pouches or any snus machines. They have changed their mind and are rather fully booked also. But now the other manufacturers doing stick pack machine like you are doing is also entering. So I think it will be a quick change on the supply.
Is there, if we were to look at some of the products that you've brought for us to see, is there a formulaic difference between them? In other words, if I were to start using a product and I would understand that, well, if I tried this brand or this brand, I can taste the difference, and then now I would prefer, then I would have a brand that I prefer. Is that how this particular work? Is it really the formulation inside the pouch, or help me out here?
Yeah, okay. It's for me it's rather easy, or for the people who is doing it, it's very easy. But all this product is done with the thinking of pharmaceutical product. This is the way how you do a pharmaceutical product. And I think we have to think about females, how they do it, the size, how the nicotine is delivered, flavors. So I always say that you need to have a product that is affordable, accessible, and attractive. And all this must match before you do a new product. Too many is just jumping in, let's do a pouch. And I think you have also to look on the side effect because you're going to use this product for a long time.
For you guys who have seen the customers come in, because it's not like you advertised yourselves this product. They came in wanting this. What does this customer look like? How would you describe them? Be nice. But.
Absolutely. I would say personally, the customer, I can't say the customer in every, I've seen customers obviously who know about the product through some other retailer, probably distribution channel where they receive, but I've seen other people, I think, kind of just experimenting, trying to understand, trying to manage their nicotine consumption. Maybe that's a cigarette customer or a smokeless customer trying to manage their consumption and just interested in trying a new way to do that. So that's what I've seen. I've seen people who have already had the product, but also people curious, and I think similar to what happened with vape early on, people experimenting, with vape, right? The disposables at one point were very popular, then people found out that wasn't good enough for them and then came back to more pod systems. But I think at the very least, folks are trying things out, and Zyn Clear seems to be, at least for now, the clear leader in terms of a solid experience.
Is male, female, young, old, is that anything that you've noticed?
Initially, I would say it was all men, and mostly smokeless, Skoal, Copenhagen.
They're used to this what it looks
Grizzly-type
like.
consumer. They were the first to do it because it was so similar to what they were doing. It was an easy transition for them to give it a try and see if they liked the flavor, if they liked the difference. And then slowly, I'd say after almost more than 6 months before you started seeing the other customers, people who use cigarettes, who use vape, and more females that decided to, they've heard it, they've seen other people using it, they've decided to give it a try.
And just before I leave you guys, the retailers, and bring it open up to everybody, just give us an idea of what the products look like on your shelves and how they're positioned, what they kind of what role they play in your larger set? Just give us an idea.
So in our newer stores today, we put it with the vapor set. The way I envision it, vapor in this category is more the emerging trend, more unique nicotine consumption. And in stores where I can't fit it because they're older stores, I'm starting to put Zins on the nicotine pouches and Zin counter units to at least see what the demand would be in those stores when exposed. But that's what it looks like today in our stores.
Great.
We started out with the smallest Zen rack, counter rack, and then at the larger stores we went to a larger rack, and then now we've gone to even a larger rack in all stores because they kept adding flavors, and that seems to be kind of like the cigars where you get a new flavor every week. You've got so many consumers that are now, I want to try this flavor, I want to try that flavor, so to keep the momentum going, you had to keep increasing the number of flavors, especially since we didn't have the availability of many competitor brands. We were mostly relying on Zen.
And flavors is certainly something that we were concerned about. I'm looking at the time and thinking that we're approaching on a Q&A opportunity, but Thomas, you had something that you wanted to say.
In a global perspective, particularly in Europe and Italy, we are picking up that people are having a kind of cigarette shame. They have been influenced, and it has been so that the tobacco industry or the cigarette industry, they have not found a new way of thinking, even though you can read on PMI's policy. So I think we have a change here, that the cigarette wall or the Berlin Wall is falling. So the categories of people moving quickly over, you will find that. They will come from everywhere. They maybe not stay, they are mixed user, they make a try, and the global cigarette industry, if we take the big ones, when we say in 5 years' time from now, cigarette consumption in Switzerland has dropped with 80%, and that, nobody believes that, of course. But if you see now IQOS, and beside that you have ON or BUS, this is PMI's, the headline of the back wall. Then you have GTI with Nordic Spirit and their non-combustible tobacco, and BAT is having the same. And then you have a massive move to something else. And I think the big cigarette companies start to move in another direction. So that will drive the category worldwide.
Jason, I'm just curious. We've got this flavor pulling all the cartridges, right? So I don't know if anyone saw that news about Enjoy possibly also doing the same. So now there's yet another area. So flavors are being targeted in vape. Right now, I guess not so much in this category, but maybe you can give us a little bit of what your perspective might be on it.
Yeah, it's hard to predict the future with both FDA and the local regulatory and municipality bodies. There's been some heightened concern over flavors and vape, and I think some of that is misguided for many reasons, which we don't go into today. But at the end of the day, we're very fortunate that this category hasn't been targeted on the flavor bans in the local states and the local jurisdictions. And I think part of the reason is simply because we have made significant strides into ensuring that this category is seen as a very serious nicotine product that's not using attractive flavor names for youth and fancy packaging of cereal brands and so on and so forth. Most of the 4 or 5 competitors in this market, most of them are owned by large, big tobacco companies internationally. So we're all taking this very, very seriously to make sure that it's stay out of the hands of youth, they're not attractive to youth, and they're targeted specifically to adult consumers that are actual smokers or snoozers or something like that. I wanted to kind of circle back on your kind of product description and characteristics, because there are some decidedly different user experience differences between the products. As you mentioned earlier, both Zyn and On share the same patent for the nicotine salts, so the inside of the product is virtually the same. The pouch material is a little bit different, but the user experience is relatively the same. Whereas Rogue is much more flavorful, very sweet forward, flavor forward, a little more of a rustic pouch, larger pouch in the mouth. Or Velo is more of a longer, narrower pouch, but it's quite large. It's also wet, so it can dry out a little bit in the pouch. So different characteristics. We've opted for a little bit more muted flavors. I mean, they're strong flavors, but not as, say, aggressive as Rogue. So I think consumers, as Ray and Pete mentioned, are gravitating, and they're not necessarily loyal. They like to try different things, just like in the vape category, where they might like Zyn for certain flavors, but they might like Drift for other flavors and so forth. And I think we will see a lot of movement across the category as consumers experiment and find the right fit for them, both on mouthfeel, flavor profile, nicotine strength. I think the customizability of the product is an important factor in how they can manage their nicotine use.
Do you think it'll go in this limited time offer place where people like the banana pineapple this week, but then next week they want the cranberry dodo?
The FDA has basically eliminated that option right now. We have, all of us are thinking about PMTAs due in May, so we're all working very aggressively to that, and I think our flavor SKU selection is pretty well locked right now. But over time, as we get through that process, I think it's certainly not without reason that we would add some new flavors and new strengths and things like that.
Can you explain that to our audience just a little bit? Because every manufacturer has to submit a specific PMTA for specific flavors. Am I correct? So you guys have to make decisions about which flavors, and this whole idea of limited time offer flavor that's only going to be available for like the summer of 2021. That's probably
that's not a real reality probably going forward. I think just for those of you that don't know, all of these products are in the market. The 5 competitors were on the market in or by August 2016, which gave us a kind of a grace period with the FDA that said they have to file PMTAs for pre-market tobacco authorizations to get approval of the new product. We're allowed to continually market the product through that process. Those applications are due in May, so all of the products in this category, like us, will be applying for the PMTA in May. And then it's a year to 2 years of continuous marketing after that, in which time we hear back from the FDA on the approvals. But it's a very costly, very laborious process. We have to do a lot of documentation, clinical trials, stability trials, lab studies, and so forth. But more on, the FDA hasn't been totally clear on exactly what they're looking for. This is a new category, so we're all kind of aiming for something that's above reproach. But we do have to file an individual PMTA for every single SKU and flavor, and every one is expensive. So I can't speak to what the other manufacturers are doing, but we're submitting for all of our 24 SKUs, and we have high confidence we're going to get through the process.
Thanks for that insight. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think FDA has to change their mindset. They have to stand behind the American people and not in front of the American people when it comes to health. I mean, lungs are made for breathing. So if you put flavors in the lungs, you have one type of regulation. But if you use it here, there is another type of regulation. It should be more viewed as sweet or other stuffs that you eat, because it's a so huge difference. So I know that when we did Nicorette inhaler, we had this discussion about the flavors. So I think FDA has to be behind the people and working for that people stop smoking, and then a product must be attractive.
I
Easy.
think anyone from the FDA here?
Come on.
Just curious. If you're spying on us, I'm just joking. All right, let's do this. Is there anyone who has a question out here? I'd love to take a question from anyone in the audience. Yes, sir. Speak up loud so we can hear it, and I'll reiterate it.
One quick clarification and one question. So you talked about a $400 million market share. Is that U.S. or global? And then my question is, we're starting to see CBD pouches come out. How does that play into the nicotine pouches? And how does it position?
All right, two separate things. So the $400 million, is that a U.S. number or is that
That's a U.S. number, but that's a run rate number based on the last 4 weeks in Nielsen. So it's just continually growing. So if it continues at flat line at current growth rate, it'll be about $400 million for the category in the U.S. this year. As far as CBD pouches, you know, CBD is a whole nother area of landmines. For us, our product, we don't want to adulterate it. It's a nicotine product, and that's what it's designed for. We're not changing our formula based on what we had in August of 2016. That's not to say that us and other manufacturers couldn't continue to pursue other innovations down the road. And there are some CBD pouches out there right now, but they don't have nicotine in them. If they do, they're probably not going to get through the process that we're all embarking on right now.
And let me ask you guys about CBD products and CBD pouches. So CBD pouches and then CBD in general, because from what I've heard, many folks are offering them behind the counter.
Yes. Absolutely. I think at the last session you actually had Canada Dips up here, which is a CBD pouch product, right? And I think going back to similar what we were talking about, bringing in nicotine pouches as a regulatory environment, and as it seems like these nicotine pouches and CBD is in infancy, I can see it pushing us retailers to try CBD pouches, try a CBD product, and that in the assumption that the future is going to be, this will be heavily regulated, it will be adult-only product, I think it can take up back our space. It's something that I look at and think about all the time, because I can see CBD product being a adult-only product that does sell well behind the counter, where tobacco space used to exist, or as consumption decreases of traditional tobacco product taking up that space.
Ray, any thoughts?
We treat it just like it is tobacco, and only because it's too hard to figure out what's in every can for the average employee, so treat them all equally and you kind of keep out of trouble.
So you're selling CBD products now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. As soon as, matter of fact, we did several seminars, year, 2 years, leading up to it, know it was going to come, trying to stay on top of it. But when it finally came out, it was like, who cares? Vape's got all the news. So CBD was just like crickets. You didn't hear anything, you didn't see anything. We put it out there, and a few consumers tried it, and a few understood what it was, but it didn't get the instant bang that you expected, because all the news was about vape.
So you're still, what are you selling now, just out of curiosity? Lotions?
We sell pretty much everything that you can, and we just had a meeting with the health department discussion on is it gummy candy or is it a delivery method? Is a hard candy, is that a lozenge like a cough drop, or is that a food item? Is this, so it's a lot of discussion on we're going to change some labeling just to make it easier for the health department to understand, because they're pretty much at a loss themselves trying to enforce the policies, and they don't really understand them. So it's been a education for everybody involved. We had a product that had honey in it, and it's been perfectly acceptable for a year, and all of a sudden last week the health department said, oh my God, honey's food, you shouldn't be selling that.
Oh well. I credit you for being directly involved with your health department, and goodness, first name basis with all those folks there?
Them and the tobacco enforcement of the state.
Any question? Yes, right here.
Standardization for nicotine pouches and the milligram limits for nicotine pouches, is there a set standard or something where, because there are companies out there which are selling 16 milligram and then there are 4, 8, so is there, and how do you standardize the same thing with CBD?
Yeah, so on the nicotine...
go ahead, standardization, we're talking about standardization of nicotine product.
It varies all over the world. In Sweden and the Scandinavian countries, you have some that are 24 milligram snus products that are very, very high nicotine. In the US, the highest concentration of nicotine in the pouch format that's legal that I'm aware of is on, where they have an 8 milligram. We offer 8. Yeah, we offer a 2, a 4, and a 7 milligram, and all the manufacturers offer something in those similar veins. And really, it's not just about how much nicotine in there, it's about how you control the release, and that's part of the science behind the product, so that you get the release at the right level, and you're not getting sick, and that you get a satisfaction that you'd be otherwise getting from a cigarette or something like that. But for us, our highest performing products are like the 7 milligram and the 4 milligram. We know that consumers are looking for that release of nicotine that satisfies their nicotine cravings. But the 2s, we offer that customization that Peter talked about, because you may want to decrease your nicotine use, and so you can kind of ratchet it down over time, or in certain use occasions you just might want a low nicotine kind of relief, and then other times you might want a little bit more.
But there's no limit set by US FDA or?
I'm not aware of any that exist today, but I think we're all trying to be as kind of thoughtful in our approach as possible. We're not certainly trying to overindulge in nicotine use for consumers.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're seeing, manufacturers, or responsible manufacturers being thoughtful so that they don't attract more regulations from different levels, federal or state. All right, no other burning questions. I mean, some of these guys will probably be hanging around here for a few minutes if you want to ask any further questions, but at this point, I want to thank our retailers and our panelists and appreciate that you all are here today too. Enjoy your show.